Now this is one of the best, strongest, and fastest leveling build for the Necromancer in Season 7. With this build you can easily level from 1 to 60 without needing any specific gear or legendary aspects. With this build you can also quickly level to 60 while going AFK because your minions will do tons of damage. I have tested all the abilities while leveling, and this is a really easy and fun build to play, and I highly recommend you to watch this video from the beginning to the end to see how everything synergizes. So let's check this out. So first I'm going to show you easily clearing tier 35 pit, allowing me to go to difficulty torment 2, and I don't even have good gear. Now this is a summoner necro leveling build, so your minions and golems will do all the tanking and heavy work, so most of the time you can just go AFK while leveling. And since you will be leveling, you'll be always switching out your gear for better gear until you reach level 60. So while leveling, it's best to just equip the higher item power level gear. So once you're level 60, then you would want to target farm your gear for a specific endgame build you like. And I'll have a full build layout in a D4 build planner in the description below. And with this leveling build, there are many skills that will complement each other, offering a lot of powerful combinations, but I'll cover everything in more details in their dedicated sections. So next for the skills. Now the basic skill I'm using is Reap, and with this skill you'll sweep a scythe in front of you, damaging enemies while gaining you some essence. Now this skill is mainly used to gain some essence, and since this is a leveling build, you'll be using your basic skill a lot to gain essence. The next skill I'm using is the core skill Sever, and this skill does tons of damage. This skill will summon a scythe dealing damage, then the scythe will return to you and attack again. This skill increases in damage the more minions you have. The next skill I'm using is Raise Skeleton, and this skill will summon skeletal warriors and skeletal mages. Your skeletal minions do tons of damage and is also good for tanking damage. And for the skeletal mages, I chose cold mages to deal crowd control and also apply vulnerable to enemies. The next skill I'm using is Golem, and this skill will summon a golem that does tons of damage and is good for aggroing enemies. And I chose the blood golem to damage nearby enemies and heal yourself. The next skill I'm using is the ultimate skill Army of the Dead, and this ultimate skill does tons of damage over time when activated. Army of the Dead will also raise your skeletal warriors and skeletal mages. And the last skill I'm using is Blood Mist, and this skill will turn you into a pool of blood which will make you immune to damage. Blood Mist will also apply vulnerable to enemies. Now I mainly use the skill to break out of crowd control effects and speed farming areas. Okay, so next for the Book of the Dead. Now for the skeletal warriors, I chose Skirmisher, and the note I chose is that you can raise an additional Skirmisher warrior. For the skeletal mages, I chose Cold, and the note I chose is Cold mages apply vulnerable to enemies, and applying vulnerable to enemies will greatly increase your damage. And for the golem, I chose Blood, and the note I chose will heal you when you activate golem. But most important is that this node will greatly increase your damage while your blood golem is healthy. Okay, so next for the mercenaries. Now for the hired mercenaries, I chose Subo, and the main reason I chose Subo is because of the skill Seeker, and Seeker will reveal all the enemies around you. This skill is really good to easily locate groups of enemies to destroy them and quickly gain experience. Then I headed left and chose Wired Trap, which Subo will place a trap on the floor that slows enemies. Then I chose Ready at Hand, which will increase your movement speed. Then I chose Cover Fire, which Subo will shoot a volley of arrows that slows enemies. And lastly, I chose Opening Fire to increase my critical strike damage. And for the reinforcement, I chose Variana, and for the skill I chose Bloodthirst, and I mainly chose this skill to gain 10% attack speed when this skill is active, and Variana will cast Bloodthirst whenever I cast any skills. Okay, so next for the witch powers. Now for the witch powers, you want to get all offensive witch powers because your skeletal minions and golem will be taking all the enemies aggro and tanking. So the first witch power I took is Aura of Siphoning, and this witch power will surround you with an aura, dealing poison damage to enemies while also healing you. The next witch power I took is Aura of Layman, and this witch power will apply an aura to the first enemy you hit, and the aura will slow enemies around and regain you some primary resource. Now the main reason to take this witch power is to regain your primary resource. The next witch power I took is Purging Touch, and this witch power will increase the damage of your other witch powers eldritch effects. Now you want to take this witch power once you get your unique witch power Doom Orb, because Doom Orb is an eldritch effect. But if you don't have the unique witch power yet, then you can take another damaging witch power. The next witch power I took is Shaken Soul, and this witch power will allow your other witch powers eldritch effect to apply vulnerable. And like before, you want to take this witch power when you get your unique witch power Doom Orb. And the next witch power I took is Wave of Woe, and this skill will launch a wave that deals shadow damage that bounces between nearby enemies when casting a skill. And the last witch power I'm using is the unique witch power Doom Orb, and this unique witch power will have an orb circling around you dealing damage, and the Doom Orb may also launch at distant enemies dealing damage. Okay, so next for the skill tree. Now this is a leveling build, so with this skill tree you don't need to have any specific gear for this build to work. This build is strong for quickly leveling to level 60. So starting with the basic skills, I put 1 point into Reap and a point into Enhanced Reap. And with this skill you'll sweep a scythe in front of you, damaging enemies while gaining you some essence. Now this skill is mainly used to gain some essence, and since this is a leveling build you'll be using your basic skill a lot. Next for the core skills, I put 5 points into Sever, a point into Enhanced Sever, and a point into Supernatural Sever. And this skill does tons of damage. This skill will summon a scythe dealing damage, then the scythe will return to you and attack again. This skill increases in damage the more minions you have. Then I put 1 point into Unliving Energy and 3 points into Imperfectly Balanced. And this skill will increase your core skills damage, but in return your core skill will cost more essence. Next for the Corpse and Macabre skills, I put 1 point into Blood Mist, a point into Enhanced Blood Mist, and a point into Ghastly Blood Mist. And this skill will turn you into a pool of blood, which will make you immune to damage. Blood Mist will also apply vulnerable to enemies. I mainly use this skill to break out of crowd control effects and speed farming areas. Next I put 3 points into Necrotic Fortitude, and this skill will give you a chance to gain a barrier when you lucky hit. And then I put 3 points into Titan's Fall, and this skill will greatly increase your damage to elites while you're fortified. And next I put 3 points into Spiked Armor, and this skill will gain you thorns, armor, and block chance. But the main reason I took this skill is to gain armor or defense and survivability. And next I put 3 points into Skeletal Warrior Mastery, and this skill will greatly increase the damage and life of your skeletal warriors. Next for the curse skills, I put 3 points into Death Embrace, and this skill will increase your damage to close enemies, and close enemies will deal less damage to you. Next I put 3 points into Death's Approach, and this skill will greatly increase your movement speed, and having high movement speed is important for speed leveling to get to areas faster. And next I put 3 points into Skeletal Mage Mastery, and this skill will greatly increase the damage and life of your skeletal mages. Next for the Corpse and Macabre skills, I put 3 points into Coalesced Blood, and this skill will greatly increase your damage while you are healthy. And next I put 3 points into Gruesome Mending, and this skill will increase the healing you receive. Next I put 3 points into Necrotic Carapace, and this skill will gain you Fortify when you form a corpse. And next I put 3 points into Reaper's Pursuit, and this skill will increase your movement speed and damage for each darkness skill on your action bar. And then I put 2 points into Gloom, and this skill will increase your shadow damage when enemies are damaged with darkness skills. Next for the ultimate skills, I put 5 points into Army of the Dead, a point into Prime Army of the Dead, and a point into Supreme Army of the Dead. And this ultimate skill does tons of damage over time when activated. Army of the Dead will also raise your skeletal warriors and skeletal mages. Next I put 3 points into Golem Mastery, and this skill will greatly increase the damage and life of your golem. Next I put 3 points into Inspiring Leader, and this skill will increase your critical strike chance for you and your minions while you are healthy. And then I put 3 points into Hellbent Commander, and this skill will greatly increase your summons damage. And then I put 3 points into Death's Defense, and this skill will increase your minions armor and elemental resistance. And last but not least, for the key passive, I put a point into Kalen's Edict, and this skill will increase the attack speed and damage of your minions for each active minion. Okay, so that's the full skill tree layout for this build to speed level to level 60 very easily. And I'll have this skill tree layout in a D4 build planner in the description below. Okay, so next for the gear. Now since this is a leveling build, you will be always switching out your gear for better gear. So ideally you just want to equip the gear with a higher item power level until you reach level 60. Gear with higher item power level will have better stats, but once you reach level 60, you will start getting maxed out item power level gear, and then you will want to get specific stats depending on the end game build you're aiming for. Now one stat I do like to have on my boots and amulet is movement speed, because having higher movement speed will allow you to speed clear areas a lot faster, gaining you tons of experience. And one legendary aspect you can get, but it is not needed when leveling, is the Reaping Lotus aspect. And this legendary aspect will greatly increase the damage of your core skill Sever, and you want to put this legendary aspect on either your amulet or your rings, because you will be switching out your amulet or rings less often compared to your other gear. Okay, so next for the Paragon Board. Now for the Paragon Board, you will just want to go directly to the legendary nodes, because you will either have few amounts of glyphs and your glyphs will not be leveled when leveling. So as you can see for the Paragon Board, I took paths that directly go to the legendary nodes, and I'll quickly skim the path I took. But ideally, once you're at level 60, you'll want to start building endgame builds, so the Paragon Board will be different. And I'll have a fully optimized Paragon Board once I reach endgame. Okay, so thanks for checking out one of the best, strongest, and fastest leveling build for the Necromancer in Season 7. With this build, you should easily level from level 1 to 60 very quickly. With this build, you can go AFK and level while doing tons of damage because of your minions. This is a really fun and easy build to play, and I'll have this full build layout in a D4 build planner in the description below. Hope this helps and more Diablo 4 videos to come, so stay tuned. And of course,